So yeah, without trying to take much time, I will start with the demo right away. Just gonna give you an overview of what we mean by EC2. If you've been with us in this class since the very first day or the second day, we've gone over what we use AWS for. AWS is a technology company that rents out its services, so sells services. Now, one of those services is to rent a server. In other words, they call it a virtual machine, but it's technically a server that is rented to us as a service. Instead of me going and buying an entire server, I only rent out the portion of a server that I need for the portion of time I need it for. Let's say I have an application, I have something I wanted to test out, and I need the server to be present and working for 6 hours. I don't want to go out and buy an entire server just to test out something for 6 hours and then have to find a way to sell back that server, or have to kind of like find a way to get rid of the server. Instead, I would contact one of those cloud providers. It could be either Amazon, it could be Microsoft, it could be Google, and there are a number of other cloud providers. I go and rent out a server, use it for however much I need it, and then basically return it. All of that, the whole transaction of getting it and returning it, is through their web service. It's not like a contract I sign. Instead, it's I request it through their web console or through their number of ways that you can get it. We'll get into the demo right now, and I will use it for however much I need it. When we're using a laptop, when we get a new laptop, the laptop is not just it's not just a metal that we have has a keyboard. Inside of it, it has many different components. In the last class, we discussed what is a RAM. We discussed what is a storage, which is like a hard disk, or it could be an SSD. We also discussed about the small components that come in a computer. The reason we covered it then is to demonstrate that when you have an EC2, basically a server is nothing but a computer. This computer needs to have some kind of storage. And that storage can be, in AWS sense, it's the EBS. This EBS is connected to our computer. So you can think of EBS as like an external hard disk or an internal hard disk. More of like an internal hard disk that comes with your computer. Then it also gives us this flexibility. If we need more computers, we can rent out more computers. If we need less computers, we can, you can give back however many you took and just keep the ones you need. So it can be scaled out. You can have more and you can have less. And in addition to that, the computers we are getting don't need to be located in one place. They could be located across the globe. And we can basically rent one computer from somewhere in Africa, one computer somewhere in the Americas, and one computer in Asia. Why we do that? We're gonna show you some examples of when you would want to rent from a specific region versus renting all your computers from the same region. We will not cover that today, but during this class, during this course, we will see examples of when we want to get computers in different regions. When I refer to computers, I mean servers. When I say computers, I mean servers here. Okay, let me start with the demo. I will go to aws.com. That will bring me to this screen. I will click here on my account. The first thing it says is AWS Management Console. And bear with me if I am moving too fast. I am moving too fast because we are going to be redoing this along with another student volunteer. So please just don't worry if I'm going a little fast. We're gonna do this in a slower pace one more time.
Ato, I just want to add one more thing. I know we started this class maybe, and this is our third week or second week, but there's some of you, most of you probably jumped in last week and today. For those of you who feel like you haven't created an account and you feel like you missed out, just follow through. Just like I said last week, we're gonna have those makeup sessions coming up. So just if you have questions, post them, but don't feel like you missed out on anything. Okay, so we just want to stay consistent with the class, and there's gonna be a makeup session. Continue. Sorry about that.
Also, before the makeup class, if you're curious and want to see, we already posted a video where we show how to create an AWS account. It's on our YouTube channel, and I have sent out a link on our WhatsApp group. If you don't have that link or need help finding that link, just ask it somewhere in the WhatsApp group, and I can send out the link again.
Yep, good point. I forgot about that. Thanks.
Okay. So I will sign in as a root user. You should be signing in using an IAM user. For now, I'm just gonna go with the root user because it will take me a little bit of time to try to create an IAM user right now. So just root user, I have my email address here. I will click next. It asks for my password, and here I have my password, I believe, saved. So I'll just open it. And this is the landing page of the AWS services. This is the AWS Management Console. When you are on the screen, you can navigate to the service you're looking for, the thing you want to rent, by going to services. And then here you have a search bar. If you know what you're looking for, you can type it out here. In our case today, we don't need to type out anything. You can just navigate here because the first service you see here under compute is EC2. That's what I'm looking for. I will click on EC2. When I click on EC2, it brings me to this dashboard. On this EC2 dashboard, the first thing I want to do is, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to rent something. We're trying to launch an instance. An instance is just basically one EC2 machine to rent. If I want to rent one machine, the language we use here is I want to rent one instance. I want to launch one instance. So you click on launch instance. So just let me repeat that. When we say launch instance, we mean we want one server. I want to rent one server, so I call it one instance. Launch instance. And when I clicked on launch instance, it brings me to this screen. The first step, step one, is to choose an Amazon machine image. With the analogy of buying or renting your laptop, think of this as choosing, do you want a Linux machine or do you want a Windows machine? So the operating system. The AMI here is the equivalent of choosing, do you want a Windows laptop or do you want a laptop that has Linux? I'm not mentioning Mac because Mac is not offered as a service. So it's either gonna be Linux or it's gonna be a Windows. I will go with the Amazon Linux 2 AMI. That's the one I want. And I will choose here the type of architecture. I'll say the 64x86. And I will click on select. Once I clicked select, I have the second step, which is to choose an instance type. On our next class, we are going to dive deeper and discuss how to choose and what to choose amongst these instances. For now, and for the sake of this class, we are always going to go with the free tier because we don't want to pay for this demonstration. So we're going to go with the free tier eligible instance type, which is this one, general purpose. Under type, it says t2.micro. In our analogy of what we spoke about the other day, these are just different types that are differentiated based on their CPU, their processing power, the memory. You know, it has 1 gigabyte And then its type, or what's the type that it is connected to, it is the EBS only. And the network performance is low to moderate, and it has support for IPv6. You can go through all of these, but be mindful that if you choose any of these, you might get charged. So when you choose, just choose the one that says free tier eligible. Then the next thing to do is to click here, next, configure instance details. The next screen, the first option we have the next step is basically to configure instance details. Configure instance details to choose the details of the server that we are going to rent from AWS. The first thing is number of instances. Here you can say, well, I want 2 instances. Maybe you want to rent 2 servers, or you could say 10, 100, whatever, however many. In our case, we're just gonna get 1 server. So it's 1 instance. The next option is purchasing option. This is basically saying if you want to request spot instance is like there's a bid charata, like the pricing model, and we're going to discuss this as well. There are 4 types of ways to pay for your rented server. One is to pay on demand, basically just pay for however much time you used it. There are other types, payment plans basically, and one of them is to request a spot instance. For now, I don't want to do that. I want to keep it as a on demand. If I use this for an hour, I just want to be charged for an hour. If I use it for 10 hours, I'll be charged for 10 hours. That's on demand. Don't worry, because I am under the free tier, I will not be charged anything for 12 months, but I'm just saying what it would be like after the 12 months. Now, the next option we have is the network. Here you choose under what network do you want to have your machine established. Essentially, we are going to cover each of these one more time. So just let's continue with this and we'll do it one more time. There is the choice of network. Network is to choose the virtual private cloud, and we will come back and revisit what this means, but for now we're just going to keep it at the default. There's a default VPC. I'm going to keep it at default. Subnet is essentially choosing your availability zone. If you joined us in the first class, we discussed that Amazon Web Services is divided into different regions, and within the United States there are 4 regions. If I come here and choose if I click here, 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 are the 4 regions within the United States. One is the US East, North Virginia, US East, Ohio, US West, Northern California, and then you have US West, Oregon. Now, each of these regions has different data centers. So when we choose the Northern Virginia US East 1 region, within the US East 1 region, there are 6 different availability zones. Now, if I come here, it says no preference, right? If I click here, you'll see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is the 6th. I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there should be a 6th one. There are 6 availability zones within, so it's 6 availability zones within the Northern Virginia region. And you can choose either one, but for our case, we don't have anything specific to any of the availability zones, so I'll just keep it at the default. Now, there's an option here where it says auto-assign public IP. You want to keep it at use subnet setting. There's nothing that we need to discuss here for now. Public IP versus private IP, we're going to cover it next. But we just keep this at use subnet setting. Essentially, if you don't have a public IP, you would not be able to connect to the internet. But if you want your instance to have internet connection, you would want to keep it, you want to allow it to be, to get assigned a public IP address. That is how other people, other instances or other people can connect to your instance if it has a public IP address. So this is the option that enables it to get an IP address. Then we have placement group, just leave that. That is essentially grouping your instance. If you have like 100 instances and you want them to be, grouped together, then you could choose, like a placement group. You tell AWS, hey, I have 100 servers that I rented from you. Can you group them all into like one cluster, or can you group them all into like, a few clusters of your choice? That kind of grouping is what we call placement group. Then the next option you have is capacity reservation, and keep that open. Then you have IAM role. We covered IAM role in the first class, and I'll just kind of give you an overview of what it is. Essentially, when you have a server, you want to allow certain people or certain services permission to access your EC2 or any of your AWS services for that matter. And IAM stands for Identity Access Management. It is like that the HR department of a company. When you have someone new join the company, you have to first assign them specific permission, tell them like where their desk is, where their chair is, where they're going to be sitting, and what kind of keys or like locks you give them. So all of that is managed by the HR, right? Similarly, in the AWS world, when you get some kind of service, you want to allow certain users access to your EC2, and you want to disallow certain access to certain users. Similarly, if there is another AWS service that needs access to your AWS EC2, you would have to assign a role. So the role is for services. Like if there is, let's say, we're going to cover in the next class something called S3 or something called RDS. These services might need access to this EC2. They need to have the right permission to be able to access it. So that's what we call a role. So if it's a human being, you give them permission. If it's a service, then you give it a role. A role is what that service needs to be allowed access to your EC2. We're not covering that here, so we don't need any kind of roles. I'll keep it at none. When we have examples that require roles, we're gonna show you different kinds of roles that you can use. So this is a little further in the course. So, but we're gonna come back and revisit this. So we'll keep these as is. There's not much needed to be covered here. It's a question of tenancy. Do you want, a dedicated hardware for your specific EC2, or do you want something shared with other users, other EC2 tenants? Keep that as shared, because if you choose dedicated, you will have to pay a specific amount of money. As you can see, it tells you here, additional charges may apply when launching dedicated instances. So just keep it as is. What I want to do here is, I have a specific script. I want to add it here in order to do a specific, to see a specific web page. But I guess for now, I'll skip that part and just do it manually. So I will just leave this and just go to the next one, which is add storage. When we're adding storage, if you remember what we discussed last class, we talked about if you have a laptop, you need a hard disk, right? Some kind of hard disk. And this is where you choose your hard disk. That hard disk in the AWS world would be the EBS. You have the EBS, which is Elastic Block Storage. It's attaching, like your computer. If I open this laptop, inside I'll find some kind of a hard disk where I can store my pictures, I can store my data. Similarly, that EC2, that server you're renting, needs to have some kind of hard disk. So you choose your hard disk here. Different kinds of volume types, like you can have SSD, you can have IOPS SSD, or you can have the magnetic standard. We'll keep it at general GP2. And then this is the size, 8 gigabytes. If you want to add it, you can add more, but to keep it under the free tier, I'll just keep it at this number. And add tags. These are optional tags. You can just add a tag and you can say name and then give it a name of say, just say my first, or just say, maybe call it Office EC2 or like some label. This is just a label you would use. It's a key value label that allows you to differentiate between all your EC2s. So it's an optional step. If you don't want, you can just skip this, but I tend to just choose to label them. And then the next step is to configure the security group. Security group serves as a firewall for your server. Now, if you have EC2, you want to be able to manage who has access, like which IP address has access to your EC2. And what does your EC2 itself have access on the outside? So we call those inbound and out of bound accesses. So when we talk about inbound, we're talking about who gets to access my EC2. When we talk about out of bound, we're talking about what can my EC2 access from the outside world? Like what IP address can it access? There are different rules. If you want to add, like say, you want to have access to a specific web page, you will add here, you come here and choose, let's say HTTP, and then you'll say HTTP, and the protocol is auto-populated for you, so you don't need to change it here. Port, you can choose the port is 80 by default for the HTTP, and here you get to choose who has access. If you have a specific IP address, a specific computer that you want to access your EC2, you can specify it here. If you want anyone and everyone to have access to your EC2, you can keep this at 0000/0. Now, the first part right here is if you are running on an IPv4. The second part right here is if you're running on an IPv6 version of the IP address. So there are two kinds of IP address versions. One is IPv4 and the second one is IPv6. If you're not going to be using IPv6, you're okay. You can remove this part and still be fine. But I'll just keep it. Now, after I've reached at this point, I can just say review and launch. Here is like one last step for me to review all the choices I've made so far, all my selections. If I made any mistakes here, I can always click on edit either in any of these steps. It'll take me back to that step. I can modify it and keep going next until I get here. So just one last step to review your selections. Once I am sure everything looks good, I can click on launch right here. And when I click on launch, it's asking me to select an existing key or create a new key pair. Now, the analogy here that works best is if you have your house, you wouldn't want to allow everyone to come in, you want just the person that has a key to be able to get into your house. So in the same way, to be allowed to access your EC2 instance, you want to have a key, and whoever uses the key is able to access it. If they don't have the key, they shouldn't be able to access it. And we call that a private key. And what you do is if you have an existing key, you can select it. But in my case, I don't have a key, so I'll create a new key pair. So there's a choice here, choose an existing key pair, or you can create a new key pair. Create a new key pair and give it a name. I will just call mine Office EC2. That's what I want to call mine. And then this is a very important step. You only get to see the screen once. So make sure that you hit this download key pair before you click on launch instances. Click this. It starts downloading something that has an extension .pem. Once you're done downloading, then click on launch instances. Reminder, so you have to first download it and then launch it, because you'll need this key to be able to access that instance. Now that I'm done launching my instance, I can click here on view instances. It brings me back to the main dashboard. here I can see that I have an EC2 instance. Its name is Office EC2. That's the tag I used. And its type is T2 micro. It's in the US East 1E availability zone. And state, its current situation is it's running. And the status checks is initializing. And after a while, I think it will change right away once it's completely boots up. And it's assigned a public DNS, an IPv4. Why was it assigned this? It's because I chose, remember earlier I said there was a choice to assign it so that I can be able, so that someone else or this instance itself will have access to the internet. You need to enable it to have this IP address. It's the key that's assigned, the key that is allowed to unlock this specific EC2 is called Office EC2. That's the key I just chose. We go to the right, and it's assigned or attached to a Launch Wizard 7 security group. That's the name of the security group I had earlier. Everything you see here, you're able to see them here too, in detail, in a greater detail. Everything that you see here, this is just selected stuff among all the detail that you see here. Now, I know that I went very fast on this one, and I was intentional about that. Now that you've seen what we're going to be doing for today, we are now going to ask someone to be able to volunteer, and we will walk you through all these steps in a slower pace one more time. But before I do that, I will finish up like the very final steps, which is to connect to this specific instance. Sorry. Who's this? Was there a question?
I'm not sure, but someone was trying to say something. Just continue, don't worry.
Okay, yeah. So let me just finish, like loop over and finish like the very last section, which is now that we have this computer that we rented from Amazon, how do I access it? How do I log in? Because obviously if I rented something, I need to use it. So how do I log in? So there are a couple of ways to log in. One way is to click here on Actions. And the easiest way is to say Connect. Click on Connect. And then choose the third option, which is EC2 Instance Connect. This is a browser-based SSH connection. And then click on Connect. Wait for it. So it's already connected. Let me just find out. Okay, right here. So as you can see, I just got logged into my EC2. If I do this and I say, for example, as you can see, I have this particular IP address, which is the private IP address. And you can see it's the same thing you see here, 172.31.57.22. So I am now basically inside that computer. I can just say anything like, some of the Linux commands that we learned, like say ls, or I could say pwd, to print where I'm at right now. It's telling me it's at home EC2 user. I can also say, who am I? And if I do that, it tells me the user that's using this, that's currently logged in, is EC2 user. That is the name of the user that's using this computer. Other things I can do is, for example, I can say ping google.com. I'm not sure. Okay, I should be able to. So it's basically sending packets to the Google IP address. It's just for sake of demonstration that I have internet connection and I'm able to knock or ping the Google IP address. So I can stop this. I can just do Control-C. I can do, I believe it's clear, just to clear it out. And then I think that's enough. I can say host name -f. If I do that, it tells me that this is the private IP address that I am logged into. As you can see, it's the same. All right, so we are logged into this computer. We are going to do something more interesting, something like, showing you a web page, essentially we can run a specific website inside of this instance. The whole point of getting the server is for it to host some kind of web application, and that web application will be reached by customers from, you know, around the globe. They will be able to access my website because it's living here. I bring my website and I save it in this computer right here, the one that I rented. And any customer of mine who wants to access my website can use this public IP address. By using this public IP address and the whatever like path I will give them, they will be able to access my website. Okay, now the next step is, this is one way to access it. You come here, you click connect, and you're able to come to this specific window, and now you're able to access it. But what you want to do is you want to be able to access it from your laptop. You want to be able to access this computer from your laptop. So I'll close this. So what I mean by that is, if you look at SSH, what you're technically doing is you have your laptop and you want to remotely access this rented computer. I'm using my laptop and I want to connect to the server that I just got from AWS. To do that, if you are on a Windows 10, or if you are on a Mac or a Linux, you can directly use SSH to connect to your remote machine. So in my case, my computer is a Windows 10. So I can just open, I will come to start, and I will write here, I think I can do CMD. I think you can't see it here because I have, okay. I come here and I say, or here, I'll say,
I can learn to understand you much better.
Okay, my bad. Okay, CMD, and I will open command prompt. And when I open command prompt, I'll see something like this. And what I want to do is I will come here and click on connect and choose the first one, which is a standalone SSH client. Okay. And then here there are some instructions that I'm reading. First instruction is to do the chmod 400 office EC2.pm. That's if you are on a Linux or if you are on a Mac, I believe. And the next step you have is this thing right here, which it tells you that it's the public DNS. However, to connect, you just need this line right here. Remember, I just downloaded this file, right? Office-ec2.pm. They're using that name here, right? So I need to first locate where this file is. I need to know where this file is. In my case, I know it's on the downloads folder, because if I come here, I go to downloads, I know that that file is right here. It's in the downloads. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, to make it easier, I will first go here, sorry, and I will change CD into downloads. So I'm right now at users and my username and then downloads. I'm inside downloads. So I know that that file is inside downloads. Then what I want to do is I will come here and copy this. And then reopen this and just paste it here. And let's just hope this will connect. I get this and then say yes. And voila, I just got connected to my EC2. So I can still do the same things I just did earlier. Like I can do pwd, I can do hostname -f, and I can see that I am right now not on my local computer. I am using my laptop, but I am connected to an external computer. That external computer is the remote computer I just rented from AWS. How do I know? As you can see, the private IP address here is 172.31.57.22, and that's what I see here. Those steps that I just did are going to be very similar for Mac users, except for one additional step. If you're on a Mac or on Linux, you need to first open your terminal and then locate where you have your key. And while you're on that folder, on that directory, you need to run this thing first. Change mod 400 and the name of your key. Then only you can come and copy this and paste it the way I did. If we have someone who is using a Mac and would like to volunteer, I can help demonstrate that using their computer.
I'll do it.
Okay, who's that? Sorry.
Yodit.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you. I will then stop this here. Once we are done with using our instance, all I have to do is come to actions, instance state, and then terminate. I don't want to stop it. I want to terminate it because I no longer need it. I don't want them to charge me if I keep this open for a couple of days. So I will click on terminate. Okay, and then click yes, terminate. And it'll take a few minutes. It'll start shutting down and then it will kind of destruct itself basically. This is the end of the demo for today. Now we are going to redo the whole thing on a couple of different machines with volunteers. If you have questions, you can ask now or you can ask while we are demonstrating it again.
So say launch instances on the top.
The blue button.
Okay. Right here. Yep.
So we choose the first one.
So, Jeremy, do you want to go? Yeah, go ahead for it. I think you lead him, but let's.
Yeah, sure. So the first one is Linux, but if we're gonna do window, scroll down until you find window.
Those are the.
So those are all the images that we can choose. Or you can, there you go, free tier window. Select the window.
So like this one?
Yes.
Okay, to configure.
Yep, configure instances.
So everything stays the same?
Everything stays the same.
Okay.
So before we saw 8 GB on the top, that's the minimum requirement for Linux. But for Windows, there is minimum requirement, which is 30 GB. So leave that as is.
Okay.
So you can add tag. Yep.
The home. EC2.
Yep. So for this one, on Linux, we access it through terminal, right? SSH, they use port 22, and then we would be able to access them. But on Windows, we use some type of RDP. RDP stands for Remote Desktop Protocol. So if you work on some companies and then you have a problem with your computer, they will be able to access it remotely and then fix whatever issue you have. So that's they call it RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. So they use port 3389. So it's the same thing with terminal, but in a different, terminal is text-based, but RDP, they use GUI, graphical user interface. So you can say review and launch.
Launch it?
Yeah, can you exit out this one so we can have a large window?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can say launch. On this one, create a new key. You can give like
Another name or keep the same?
You can give it window or something. Or you can put it home as you did. Okay.
And then download it?
Yes.
Okay.
And then go to the bottom part, launch instances.
Okay. View instances.
View instances, yes. So if you can see under the instances, we use the same type of machine, micro, T2 micro, and then our location is North Virginia, US East 1. And then our instances type is pending. So this is when the Amazon install the software, Windows or Linux, whatever you choose. So they installing the software in our server, and then we're gonna do the status check. After this one came healthy, like the first one, we would be able to connect with the EC2. So try to refresh it, like,
Refresh it.
yeah, on the, yep. Windows takes a little bit more time than Linux because it is a little bit bigger.
I think it's because it is 30 gig, maybe.
Not only that, because Linux is only text-based, is faster, but Windows is a graphical, like they have to install all the images and they have to run it, all that stuff. So that's why the requirement on Windows is a little bit bigger when we choose the hard drive. On Linux, we can only use 8 GB and the machine still can run because it's only text. But on Windows, it's a large because they use graphical interface. Click it and connect. So on Windows, we're gonna download the remote desktop file. So that would give us access, like we can remotely access the computer that we just generated.
Mm.
So on the bottom, you see it says a password.
Yeah.
Get password. Yeah, click that one. So choose file. So the file we downloaded, it was encrypted. So now we're gonna decrypt it and then have like the same way you log into your computer. Let's say the second one, Windows EC2.
This one?
Yes. So before we had this long text, but now we're gonna decrypt it to human readable password. So you see the password now it changed. Yeah, copy that one. Click on the one that looks like file. Yes.
Clipboard. Okay.
Yep. So your username is administrator. It's gonna auto-populate it. Run the application, the one you just download. The one right here.
Which one? This
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, double click. Say connect. So you already have your password. You can paste it. Yep. Okay. So just press yes. They're talking about certificate.
So if anyone, if you guys remember when you guys first buy a laptop and you from Best Buy, you open it up and plug in and press power, you're gonna have to do some kind of basic setup. This is literally what's happening. It's just gonna go through and set up a new Windows operating system.
So now you just logged in to your EC2, the one on Amazon.
Say yes.
The way to know is like you didn't have the EC2, everything is brand new one. So any question on this process? So somebody asked which one we need, Linux or Windows. It's up to you, whatever you prefer.
So to answer that question, most of in the cloud and or server environment, most, I mean, 70–80% they say, or a huge percentage at least, is going to be Linux. So pretty much anything you do at work, most of the time is going to be Linux. That's what the server operating system is widely used. Windows, I haven't seen it being used, but could happen too. But this is just to show you, because everyone had at least an experience of this Windows computer. The Linux one could be a little bit intimidating initially, but we just wanted to show you that this is the rented computer that you have in Virginia data center, pretty much. And as you can see, you have the private IP, all the information is listed. If you minimize this, yeah, go ahead and minimize it. And if you can probably look at all the information. Yeah, you can just close this if you want. And hit X. And scroll down a little bit, or yeah, try to, you see the three things. Yep, there you go. So the private IP, the public IP, all the information matches the Windows EC2 that you created. So kind of the same thing we did was Atto, and that was Linux. This one is Windows, and I guess you have an understanding now what an EC2 was either operating systems is going to look like.